how to fund your open source project without selling out. And like the idea here is that like, you know, there's plenty of open source projects that can make money, right? Like maybe they like do consulting for their project, or like they offer like a paid tier. I think famously there was that like project, I forget what it was, like when you do the pay, like you have to do the pay, Docker. And for Docker, you're forced to update. If you want to not update your Docker app, you have to pay, which is like crazy, right? Like, because they're trying to like force a business model into this open source project. So this is how to do that, you know, how to not have to force a business model, but still be able to make money and pay bills and all that. I mean, we're going to use retroactive funding basically, but you know, basically the first step is that you really can't do this unless your project has some hype. It has to have some users, some community. Like it needs to be something that at least some people are finding useful already. So now I'll do a quick explanation of like retroactive funding. So this is the quote from Vitalik from the Optimism article that he wrote with like the Optimism team. It's basically like the idea is that it's easier to tell like what's going to be useful after the fact rather than before the fact. You know, it's easier in hindsight to know what was useful, right? Like we all know like what the big inventions were of the past 20 years that like changed society, right? Like you could ask anyone on the street and they'd be able to tell you. But if you ask people on the street, what are the next 20 years big inventions that are going to change society? Like, you know, who knows who's going to be right? So yeah, and then the general idea here is that we're trying to build like an ecosystem where that's similar to the startup ecosystem, where you can have exits, and you can be rewarded if you end up being correct about like, you know, what's going to be useful. So the general idea is you have like a DAO. He calls it the results oracle, but you know, this can really just be like a foundation, just like some large body that's giving out money, and you know, like basically, you know, they earn money from some like revenue source, or whatever, and they philanthropically decide to retroactively fund projects. So they decide to like reward projects that they think are useful to the community and that have already proven themselves to be useful. So to actually use this in your own project, I basically wrote this like step-by-step guide. It's like 5 steps. So first you make a token, and the token's only use case is to keep track of who contributed to the project. And the nice thing about this token is that it probably doesn't really pass the Howey test, which is good. So like it's probably not a security. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but hopefully it's not a security, because like you know, if we go to the Howey test real quick, you can see it's basically a test of like, if you pass this, then it's a security. So like if there's an investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit to be derived from the effort of others, right? Like that's like how stocks work basically, right? And in this case, you know, this token is like not an investment. It's just like keeping track of who contributed to this project. There's no real expectation of the project intrinsic to the token itself. Like there's no revenue share or anything like that. And you know, it's also definitely not revenue share based on the effort of others. So yeah, you make a token. The idea is you want it to track who contributed to the project early on. So you know, a very easy way of doing this is to go on coinmechanic.com. You just like build token, give it a name or whatever, you know, supply or whatever. You can make it mintable, you can make it burnable, pausable, snapshots and all that. It doesn't really matter like how decentralized this token is, because it's really just a record of who contributed to the project, and anyone else can make their own record if they disagree. Like, you know, like if Nate and I are doing a project and like, I'm like, oh yeah, I did 80% of the work, and Nate's like, wait, I totally did half the work. He can make a fork of the token where he has half of them. So it's really just like whoever created that token, it's their truth for like who contributed to this project. Yeah, so yeah, you have that token. You start giving it out to like, you know, kind of like startup founders who give out equity in their startup. You give it out to contributors. And then eventually you might find yourself needing money to pay bills today. So what you could do is mint some of those tokens and sell them. You know, like, you know, you could sell like 20% of the total supply to investors for whatever, you know, right? And the investors will give you money. And, you know, a tool you can use to sell it would be like Uniswap v3. So, you know, you could mint 1,000 tokens. The nice thing about the Coin Mechanic tool, let's see if they remembered my tokens I've already made. Might be in Safari. Coin Mechanic, they have this like token manager page, which lets you do all this with like no code. Oh, man, they don't have my old token. All right, I made one yesterday, but basically the token manager lets you just like edit your token, like mint new tokens and all that stuff whenever you want. So you mint a few of them, then you go put them in a Uniswap pool, and you put them in the price range that you want to sell the tokens at. So say, you know, you want to sell them at like, $10 a token. You put them in the pool, and it's very easy to do this. It's like 2 steps, and you can sell all of them just in that range. And of course, you have to. Here we go. Of course, you have to like market, like you have to like tell the community what you're doing. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna try to raise some money here. We're gonna try to sell some of these useless tokens. And like the real key part here is that like these tokens really are useless because like that situation with me and Nate, like, say we raise some money using my token, then later on, like, Nate's token becomes the dominant one that people respect, then it's like, like the investors might not have that token, right? So like, it's really like not trying not to be a security, just trying to be a measure of who contributed value, whether through time or money. So yeah, then, you sold your tokens, you can exit out your Uniswap LP position and like withdraw the cash. So now you can pay the bills today. And you can imagine like kind of like a startup, they have different rounds where they raise more and more money. You could also do that for this, but usually a lot of successful open source projects don't have a lot of contributors, so you're probably not going to be raising like hundreds of millions of dollars here. You're only doing like 2 rounds at most probably. Yeah, and then so now that you have money, you can focus on growing the project, making software people want. If the project becomes a public good, then the community of retroactive funders like Optimism has volunteered to be like one of the first organizations that's funding retroactive grants. That community, that group can choose to fund your project retroactively. And the key thing here is that like when they're deciding how to do that, they have to make 2 decisions. One is which projects to fund, and the other one is who to distribute the money to, like who gets the rewards. So really in this case, like they might look at like the token you have as a suggestion about who contributed to the project, but they could choose to ignore that suggestion. They could choose to change things. They could change the weighting of like investors to like coders, contributors, or like marketing contributors or whatever, like different people. They can choose like how the money's distributed. The token really is just a suggestion, but the nice thing about the token is that also like you get like a history of this token, right? Like they can look back and see that when I made this token, then Nate forked it later, and they can try to understand what the history was and like who really contributed what. Yeah, and then after the retroactive funding happens, the token exit happens, you can just kill the tokens, and everyone can forget about them, and the project can continue on just like donations. Now that everyone knows that it's a successful project, they're willing to donate however much it needs every month to keep it alive. So yeah, that's it. And some FAQ, like, do I need a multi-sig for minting the tokens? Like, how much like operational security do you need? And I think it's not much, mainly because like, if I mint this token for my project and then someone steals my private key, I can just fork the token under a new account and tell people, yeah, all right, I lost my key, we're just gonna use the new token now, whatever. Like, everyone gets the same amount of the new token that they had of the old one. So it's really like unimportant. And will the tokens be centralized? I talked about this earlier, but it just doesn't really matter because it's really just a suggestion anyway to the funding group at the end. So yeah, any questions? Oh, back to the steps. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind going over the mechanism of like the actual retroactive payment? Because I caught what you're saying of like raising rounds of money. Okay, people can basically donate to you by buying these tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one more time, like how does, say, Uniswap, they say, actually, we're going to send 1 DAI for every 1 token everyone has?
Yeah, yeah. So the mechanism they can do there. So what they can do, like, say the Uniswap grants DAO says, all right, we're going to retroactively fund this project. They can make a Uniswap pool, and they can, be a liquidity provider in that pool and say, basically it's set up so that they can say, all right, we'll buy all of these tokens. We'll buy a token for $1 a piece. Yeah. Okay. And another way they could do it is airdropping too. Yeah, it could be redemption. It also could be airdrops, like they just drop the money into everyone's wallet who owns a certain amount of the token. Yeah. Yeah.
I might have missed something, but why would someone buy the token today if there isn't an expectation of profit?
Yeah, so they buy the token today if there is. So the reason they buy the token today is because, well, there still is an expectation of profit, but it's not an expectation of profit from, not like necessarily from owning the token. Like you think about like like you invest money in like Compound or Aave. The smart contracts are giving you that expectation of profit directly. Owning those tokens, those like interest-bearing tokens, is like the real expectation of profit. In this case, the token itself isn't as valuable, but you could expect profit from like when the project gets funded retroactively in the future. So if the project's successful, then like someone will fund it and they'll pay off all the token holders in the future.
But then that doesn't pass the Howey test
Yeah,
anymore
it
because
could
now
get
you're
shaky
expecting
for
profit
sure.
from
Yeah,
the
it sounds like security.
Well, it could be okay. Guys, I'm not a lawyer, but I think all right, I think it wouldn't. I think it's fine because you're not expecting profit from the person you bought the token from, and you're not expecting it directly from owning the token. And also, those people in the future who buy out the token holders, they can also choose to just not do that. They can change the weightings. Like they can say, all right, this person actually, even though they only have 10% of the tokens, I think they contributed 20%. So it's like, I guess it's like a weak expectation of profit rather than like a strong one, which maybe, obviously the Howey test, they didn't have this in mind when they were writing it, but I think you could slip away from the Howey. Like you can slide by.
Probably you would slip away from the SEC.
Yes, you can. You live on a pirate outpost
Okay,
outside of
in the US.
Well, look at it like this. Like it might not be security, but like there's like you can still like make money off of like things like commodities, right? Like I can decide to sell to the open market 1 million bananas, right? Like that's totally not a security. Like the Howey test isn't just the expectation of profit; it's the expectation of profit from the effort of others. And I think implicitly in the Howey test, right? Like we'd want to talk to like lawyers, right? But I think implicitly in this, it's that like you have to have the common enterprise, and like usually this is for things where it's like you're owning the common enterprise. You're owning some sense of it. The token, you don't really own anything. Like it's just like a list of who contributed.
There's not a guaranteed expectation of some sort of profit or value, right?
Yeah.
Like if I buy a stock in your company, so unless the entire company hits zero, I can sell it.
And it's also legal in that case. In that case, it's a legal contract that you own the revenue of that company.
So you're saying this token is just a receipt for your donation.
It's a receipt for your
And
donation.
maybe in the future, Optimism might pay you for that
Yeah.
receipt.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can almost expect things different than the law would expect. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can expect things different than the law would expect. So this is
Exactly.
it is a receipt.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's gambling.
Yeah.
There could be a big return on that.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
But it may be zero.
Yeah.
Gamble on hard hat.
Oh, I mean, like venture capital. A lot of people consider venture capitalism
Yeah.
gambling. Yeah. It's modeled after that. Yeah. Yeah.